Hello everyone, welcome to my level 80 Druid speed set farming guide for World of Warcraft: The War Within. I'm recording this in patch 11.0.7, so hopefully not too much has changed by the time you're watching this video, but in any case, if you want to run very fast in WoW, this guide will help you get there. If you like min-maxing in World of Warcraft, this is just another way to do that. The difference being, we're min-maxing our movement speed. So why are we doing this on a druid? Well, druids are bar none the best character for farming old dungeon content specifically, and the reason for that is right here in this ability, Dreamwalk. Dreamwalk puts druids in a league of their own. No other class can compete. If you run to the end of a dungeon, loot the end boss, you can simply Dreamwalk back to the Emerald Dream, reset your instance from here, Dreamwalk back, and that's going to plant you right at the entrance of the dungeon or in the nearest graveyard, which, even if it's a little bit far away, it's going to be way faster than running all the way back out of that dungeon in most cases. Other reasons are Druid has access to 2 sprints in the forms of Dash and Stampeding Roar. Travel form can be useful, especially if there's some water that you need to cross in certain dungeons, as you get a little bit of a sprint through water as well. And you have Stealth. Stealth, it's not going to be that useful. As you farm old content, you can mostly just charge through and kill everything. So it's there. It's just a little added bonus, I guess. Other classes can be made very fast through speed sets as well, and this guide will help you do that. But in my opinion, there's really not as much benefit as doing it on a druid. So let's take a look at what we can achieve through Abyss speed set, which I think mine is pretty close at this point. In just regular Night Elf form, I'm moving at 183% movement speed here, and you're going to want to download an add-on which shows you your actual movement speed. I'm using a lightweight one called Dynamic Movement Speed, which just puts a little movement speed indicator on your screen. I got it tucked down here at the bottom. When you look at your character statistics sheet, this speed shown here just refers to your speed stat on gear, okay? It's not actually your movement speed. There's plenty of sources of movement speed which are not going to be shown in this calculation, so this is effectively useless. Don't look at this. You're going to need an add-on. So my druid, we're moving at 183% movement speed just running around in Night Elf form. As soon as I go into cat form, we're at 218% movement speed. If I were to get onto a ground mount, you can see I'm moving at 210% movement speed, so cat form is actually faster for me. If I hit either of my sprints, that jumps all the way up to 268%, which is very fast. And if we use our rocket boosts from Wrath, that goes all the way up to 358%. Very, very fast. Another thing you can do is go into Stealth, which is a flat 5% movement speed bonus, so that puts me at 223. In cat, and that stacks with all the sprints and nitro boosts as well. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you are in travel form, you're locked at 200% movement speed. So being in cat is actually faster. There's really no point ever to go into travel form unless you're trying to hop over something like so. So let's have a look at the talents. I'm going to put a link to these talents in the video description, but keep in mind, this is from 11.0.7, so if some of these talents have changed over time, this import won't work for you. But if you just follow along with the main points in this video, it should work out just fine. So we're going to want to play as Feral Druid so that we can stay in cat as much as possible. Feline Swiftness is the most important talent to take, and it's right at the start, very easy to get to. You're going to want to pick up Lunar Inspiration, which allows you to Moonfire in cat without leaving cat form, which is helpful for picking off solo mobs or pulling a group from far away. You're going to want to do not pick up Brutal Slash, because that's going to limit your number of times you can swipe in a row, which is going to slow you down in dungeons. You do want to pick up Primal Wrath, because even though the tooltip says it has an 8-yard range, it actually, if you read the yellow text, affects a 10-yard range, which is slightly larger than swipe, and that's going to be helpful in certain niche cases. From time to time there'll be like a group that's a little bit spread out and you can kill the whole group with Primal Wrath, so that's nice. The other things you're going to want to make sure you pick up are really anything that affects your energy regeneration. You're going to want to have as much energy as you can as you're running fast through dungeons. You're going to want to take Wild Charge and avoid Tiger's Dash. Tiger's Dash is actually inferior to regular Dash for us. And Wild Charge is useful, specifically, I would say mostly for the aquatic form sprint, if you're ever in a dungeon with some water. And then lastly, you're going to want to pick up Lycara's teachings with both points in here, and I'll go over this more when we get to the gear section. As far as the hero talents go, Druid of the Claw is a little bit better than Wildstalker because it's the only one of the two with a talent that affects your movement speed, and that's right here, Pax Endurance. It extends the duration of your Stampeding Roar by 25%. It's pretty minor though, so if you really do want to play as Wildstalker, there's no problem with that. Outside of that, the reason we picked up Night Elf here is twofold. Firstly, the racial passive Quickness improves your movement speed by a flat 2%, which is nice. And Shadow Meld is from time to time useful as well. If you're ever stuck in combat, it's not going to allow you to dreamwalk, and you know, there's other cases where you might want to drop combat or, you know, go into stealth suddenly. So I think Night Elf is probably the best choice. But if you are already married to another form of Druid, it's fine. They're not that big of a deal. In fact, Zandalari Druid is actually really good too, with Embrace of Gonk, which adds a flat 5% movement speed. So if you really wanted to min-max only your speed, Zandalari Druid might be the way to go. Alright, so hopefully that wasn't too much of an intro and I didn't lose you guys. So let's get into the meat and potatoes, the gear. This is where really all comes from. So I'm going to go in order of what I think is most important and most easy to acquire, so you can kind of get off the ground and start moving fast, and that's going to, you know, make you feel like, hey, this is pretty fun, hopefully, and keep you motivated to try and grind out the rest of it, even though in my opinion it's really not much of a grind. So firstly and foremostly, search your war banks. You can do this easily. You just go look at your war bank. If you've been collecting any gear which is tradable and equipable within your war bank, just type in speed in the search bar, and it's going to highlight anything with plus speed on it. Okay? If you're finding any gear with speed on it as you're going through the War Within, put it in your warbank and funnel that to your druid or whatever character you're deciding to do this on. So that is number one, the easiest way to acquire some speed gear. Now next, and most importantly, you're going to want to equip your Heart of Azeroth. If you don't have this, you're going to have to look up a guide on how to acquire it. It's very simple. It's unlocked. Actually, it used to be level 50. I guess now you can just go into Chromie Time and get it right away. Short quest line to get your Heart of Azeroth. The reason we're going to be wearing this is so that the Azerite traits on our Azerite gear are active. So you're going to want to acquire 3 pieces of Azerite gear. There's many sources of this gear which has the specific trait we're looking for, but I'm going to list the 3 easiest ones to get really quick. And before I show you where they come from, I just want to mention that you want to farm these up on normal mode, okay? Ever since they've changed the scaling on gear, normal mode gear for some reason is now the highest item level. It's higher than heroic and mythic, so I don't know why, but that's the way it is. So if you go back to BFA dungeons now, just make sure you got them set on normal mode. And honestly, it's better for us anyways, because that allows us to just farm the dungeon over and over without a lockout until we get the item we want. And the loot tables in BFA dungeons are not very big, so you should be able to get these items without too much difficulty. So what we're looking for specifically is the Long Strider trait. If you read the tooltip, what it says is that your movement speed is increased based on your highest secondary rating, and that's important. So you are going to want to pick one of your 4 main secondary traits to stack as much as you can, and the easiest one to do is going to be critical strike rating. And the reason for that is because we chose 2 points in Lycara's teachings, which give us 6% extra critical strike from all sources while we're in cat form. So you can do it with any stat you want. if you're already main a druid and you have a bunch of gear and you're stacking another stat, that's fine. You're probably gonna have no problem maxing out on your long strider traits. But if you don't have any gear and you're, starting fresh, crit is the easiest way to go. So just look for crit on your speed gear to really optimize, okay? So you're going to want 3 pieces of Azerite gear, head, shoulders, and chest. Your head comes from Tol Dagor, last boss. Your shoulders come from Freehold, last boss, Harlan Suite. And when you're farming this, you can just run straight to Harlan. You don't have to kill any of the other bosses or trash. And the last one, the chest, I got it from Motherlode on normal. So once you have those 3, you're already going to feel a pretty big boost to your movement speed. So once you've got your Azerite gear together, the next easiest item to acquire is going to be your boots. We're going to be applying an enchant called Minor Speed, which at least at the time of this video is very cheap on the auction house, just 10 gold. And that's going to apply a flat 10% movement speed to your boots. The only caveat is you can only apply this item to items with 320 item level or less. So you can't put this on any War Within Dragonflight boots, okay? So you're going to have to get some old boots. You can easily do that right on the auction house. Just choose feet. Boom, you can scroll to 320 eye level and just search for something at this item level or lower. If you want to take a little bit of a step further than that, if you have a friend who has leatherworking or you are a leatherworker, you can craft your own boots from Shadowlands. The Shadebound treads are pretty good, and you can add an affix to them which adds speed. So you can have an extra 70 speed on here, which is absolutely nothing, but it's something. At least you'll have a speed stat on the tooltip. And it does give you ground mount speed while you're in the Shadowlands. That's, again, very minor and probably never really going to see a benefit from that, but these boots will work just fine. You can also make sure that they have crit on them. I think that the absolute best boots you can get are the Legion Sentinels Eternal Refuge crafted boots. These are very expensive to make. I think they took something like 65, it might have even been 100 Blood of Sargeras to make these, but they are a little bit better than the crafted Shadowlands boots in that they have 3 gem sockets, which you can gem up with some speed gems like I've done. But all that stuff is really minor, guys. If you just want to buy some cheap boots for, 10 gold off the auction house, some slap minor speed on them, it's going to work just fine. And it's going to get you that 10% movement speed. The next most important thing to focus on is going to be your rings. You're going to want to make sure you pick up 2 rings with plus speed on them. You can buy these off the auction house, and you can do that by filtering onto rings and looking for hoop, which is your spinner's hoop of the quick blade, and then Surcelet, which I picked up quick blade as well. Rings tend to have a lot more secondary stat than other pieces of gear, so if you are stacking a specific stat like crit, you're going to want to make sure that you search for rings with that stat and speed. These can be pretty hard to find, and a lot of people have become wise to this, so they can be pretty expensive too. But if you search the auction house long enough, you will find cheap rings that'll work for you. And why these are the next most important thing to acquire is because we can use the Magnificent Jeweler settings from the auction house to add 2 sockets to each of these. And that's going to give us a total of 4 sockets to start with. And then you can buy an Elusive Blasphemite and stick this in one of those slots. And what this does is improves your movement speed by 2% for every unique Algari gem color. And there are 5 of those. There's rubies, sapphires, onyx, emeralds, and ambers. Don't forget about ambers. Even though they just have, stamina on them, we don't care about that. We only care about our movement speed, right? So once you've got all those gems socketed in, that's another 10% flat movement speed, which is going to improve your speed by a lot. And if you've gotten this far, you're going to really start to feel it. You're going to feel like you're moving pretty quick. Keep in mind that in order to get the maximum benefit from your Elusive Blasphemite gem, you are going to need extra sockets in both your belt and your wrist. You can find items on the auction house which already are socketed, but they're going to be very hard to find with plus speed also. So an alternative is you can add sockets to each of these 2 slots by using the tokens from your Great Vault each week. So that is going to take a bit of grinding, but it is possible to add sockets to these 2 slots. And you're going to need that to add the last 2 gems. And one other thing I should mention, you cannot put Algari gems in your boots if you've made the Sentinel's Eternal Refuge, or if you have another set of boots that might have sockets. They won't function. For some reason, the colored gems have to be in War Within items in order to interact with the elusive Blasphemite, so just keep that in mind. Let's take a quick look at the enchants. Starting with your cloak, there's Enchant of Burrowing Rapidity, which is a War Within enchant. For your chest, you have Accelerated Agility, which is also a War Within enchant. And your wrists, also War Within, are Chant of Armored Speed, and this is the biggest one. It's 1,000 speed, which is kind of huge. For my rings, we have Cursed Critical Strike, which is, you're going to want to select whatever stat you've decided to stack. If it's crit, then definitely it's this one. It's the highest amount of secondary stats you can get through an enchant, and you will sacrifice some of another stat to get it, but you know, it really shouldn't matter. We already covered the minor speed on your boots. I don't have a leg enchant. I didn't really feel like it was worth it. The build is technically enchanted with nitro boosts, but I'll get to that later. And finally, for the weapon, you can put Wafting Devotion. Again, it's pretty minor. It's a proc that will add about 500 speed when it's up. It's not a big difference, but I wanted to min-max, so I put it on my weapon. Outside of that, you're just going to want to try to find gear for all your other slots which has plus speed on them. And preferably the stat which you're specifically looking for, like Critical Strike. And you can do this, again, through your warbank, or just by searching for items on the auction house. And I'll do a little piece on how to search the auction house and do some cross-realm trading to acquire some of these pieces at the end of the video. As far as your trinkets go, you're going to want to find any trinkets that have plus speed on them. And again, these are most likely going to come from your warbank tradable items. As you acquire items, you know, just quickly check them to see if they have speed, and if so, funnel that to your speed character. There are 2 choices which I think are the optimal choices, but it's so RNG to try and farm these 2 items up that I really wouldn't focus too much on them. If you get lucky and you find them, that's great, but if not, that's fine too. Any plus speed item is going to help you move a little bit faster. The 2 best items, at least in my opinion, are the Quick Wick Candlestick and the Scroll of Momentum. I was lucky enough to get both of these with plus speed. So what the Quick Wick Candlestick does is it gives you a 20% movement speed bonus for 20 seconds, which is kind of a healthy little extra sprint. It's not as big as Dash or Stampeding Roar, but you know, it's handy from time to time. If you want to move a little bit extra fast, there it is, another 20% sprint on demand on a 2-minute cooldown. And the Scroll of Momentum will add a little bit of bonus movement speed just based on your melee attacks as you're running through dungeons. I found it's actually kind of hard to get it to proc the full amount, the full bonus of 20% for 10 seconds, but you know, you'll always be somewhere in the range of 2 to 8% extra movement speed if you manage to pick up this trinket with plus speed on it. So these 2 are best, but again, you know, I have other trinkets with just regular plus speed on them, and they do almost the same job. One other thing you're going to want to do is to pick up engineering, specifically Wrath of the Lich King Northrend Engineering, and you're going to want to get that up to at least 30, because at 30 you learn nitro boosts. You can add nitros to your belt at any eye level, and that's going to give you another sprint which you can hit on a short cooldown, which is very fast and very worth getting. One other little piece of secret tech you can use is an Azurite Essence in your Heart of Azeroth, which is going to help you move faster, which is Ripple in Space rank 3. So you can get this by buying it from Mother in the Heart of Azeroth chamber, which you're going to have to farm a little bit of a quest line and some horrific visions in order to get the currency to buy it. It is so minor, and it only works in BFA dungeons, zones, instances, stuff like that. So it adds an extra 5% flat movement speed while you're in these zones. So if you really, really want to min-max, you can do that. But it's not super necessary, and it's not going to work in most of the game anyways. Another little time-saving piece of tech is to make yourself a reset instances macro, which is shown on screen here. I'll also put this in the video description. And that just goes on your hotbar and lets you reset instances without having to go through the process of clicking your frame and hitting it there. Alright guys, so I'm going to quickly show you how to find plus speed items on the auction house on your server and other servers. So I use a website called undermine.exchange. And the UI is pretty much the same as the UI in-game for the auction house. The main difference being you've got this drop-down menu which allows you to search different servers. As you may know, commodities like herbs or stuff like that, that's region-wide, so it doesn't matter what server you're on, you're going to be seeing the same price in your region, but items you can equip like armor and BOEs, those are server or cluster specific, so it is going to be helpful to search on other clusters for the best deal. And honestly, a lot of these plus speed items are kind of rare to begin with, so you may not even find them on your specific server that you're already playing on. So to look for plus speed items, you simply find your server to begin with, go to armor, leather for druids, and then you can highlight plus speed here and search. And that's going to show you all the items on the auction house which have plus speed on them. You can see by the item level that everything here and below is Dragonflight and earlier, so we're just going to ignore all that stuff and look up here at all of this Underscout's gear. And you can see that we have gloves on the auction house. These are peerless gloves, so they're going to have crit, and that's going to be good for us if you decided to stack crit. And it'll tell you that there's 2 posted. So now in order to actually take a look at this item, you're going to have to go in-game and search for that item. There's not a good way that I know of on this website to really dig in further. What's shown here, this 380 gold, this is the lowest price posted for this item, not the price of the item with plus speed on it necessarily. So, you know, you may go into game and search on the auction house for this specific item and see that there is one for 380 and one for 380 that has plus speed. So you're going to want to have to investigate for the best deal, and if you don't find it on your server, try other servers. When it comes to rings and weapons though, I don't know of a good way to track down the plus speed items. As with fingers and other things, you don't have that plus speed option here on the website, and same thing for weapons. So that's kind of a pain in the balls. The way I did it, I just did it manually, trying different servers, looking for weapons and mousing over the tooltips until I found a good one with plus speed. Or you might get really lucky and maybe you found something in your warbank that already had plus speed on it. But as far as the equipable leather items go, this is going to help shortcut your search for plus speed items. Alright guys, that about wraps up this guide. Let me know if anyone has any questions in the comments. And other than that, I hope you guys enjoy, and this helps you get moving in fast mo. And I'll see you guys on the next one.